Hi everyone, and welcome to Book My Therapy. Today we have Saranyaa. She is a registered psychotherapist in Ontario whose work sits at the intersection of trauma, psychodynamic therapy, sex therapy, and feminist anti oppressive practice. She has supported survivors and communities across shelters, crisis services, and sexual assault centers, and now runs a private practice where she works with individuals and couples navigating trauma, desire, identity, and relational patterns. Saranyaa is known for her warm relational approach, blending deep clinical training with a commitment to justice, embodiment, and culturally attuned care. Her work is grounded in the belief that healing is both personal and political, and that meaningful change happens in relationship which honors the wisdom people carry in their stories. Thank you so much, Saranyaa, for taking the time to join us for this podcast. And welcome to Book My Therapy.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
It's our pleasure. Thank you. So, I have a few questions for you. So, the
Mhm.
first one is about what sparked your calling to psychotherapy and how does it shape your sessions today?
Yeah, such an important question. So like many other therapists and counselors, my journey is also very personal. So I come from an immigrant family from Sri Lanka, and I was probably in my undergrad when my family was like, "There's too much conflict going on. We need some external help." So my parents were seeking out a Tamil speaking therapist, which was really difficult to find. This is probably a little bit over a decade ago. It was really hard to find someone who was speaking our language and was able to kind of work across generations. But we did find somebody. And this is my first time realizing how much of a difference therapy and counseling and learning different skills can actually make a really big impact in breaking patterns and cycles in our family. So that was a really big like aha moment for me to be like, wow, this therapy thing actually makes a difference. Wow, who would have thought? So it really made an impact to me personally. And then I started going to therapy individually as well. So that really helped me kind of understand that like being, a child of immigrant parents, how important like slow but also relational and grounded in like consent culture, how important that kind of therapeutic experience is when you're working with a counselor or a therapist, right? So really coming from that perspective of we're not trying to fix people, but we're really trying to help them reconnect to parts of themselves that maybe went quiet or froze or was fawning too much, right? Like really understanding different patterns that are intergenerational. So really sitting at that intersection, right, of trauma and healing was a very personal experience. And I love to bring that into my own therapeutic experiences with my clients too. Yeah.
I like how you beautifully said it's not
Mhm.
fixing people, it's like reconnecting. Well said.
Mhm.
So,
Thank
thank you
you.
for sharing that one.
First.
So, how does your own therapy experience help you spot client breakthroughs?
Yeah, I think it's so important to be a client when you're a therapist or a counselor because you do understand how sensitive but also how vulnerable that space is. And being my own therapy experience, like I can feel the sensitivity, my own intuition, but my own vulnerability, and looking at it as a strength and as opposed to a weakness, which is what I thought before going to therapy, right? So when I'm hearing a client soften using specific, like different languaging or the risking connection or honesty, they're like, I've never told anyone this before. It's my first time talking about this. It's really understanding the depth of risking that emotional connection piece. And I think breakthroughs aren't always cathartic or big, right? It can be like very subtle changes that can be like, how are they talking about themselves? What is different maybe than 2 months ago and how they were thinking about themselves, right? So it can just be like a shift in a boundary or like learning that boundaries are okay to have. It's actually really safe to have them. It's necessary or growing a new relationship to their angry parts, right? Instead of letting that be a bad thing. It's like, no, we do need anger. It's it's a protective mechanism sometimes, and we need that, right? So how are they changing their languaging in response to their own stories is how I'm kind of feeling what a breakthrough is for them. And then really pausing and celebrating that moment with my clients too. Yeah.
That's so wonderful. Yeah, we always think of breakthrough as something foreign,
Mm,
and has
mhm.
to be like grand.
Of
But
course.
yeah, it's subtle and
Yeah.
well said, well defined.
Thank you.
So when it comes to trauma survivors,
Hmm.
what do trauma survivors teach us about true resilience and how can one build resilience?
Yeah. So with all my experience of working with trauma survivors from shelter work, working with police, working with, sexual assault support centers, I've learned so much through their therapy process and their healing processes. And what I tend to hear is that first, when clients come in, excuse me, they really want to say, I want to become the person I used to be, or I want to bounce back to who I used to be. But as we continue that healing process, their verbiage really changes, right? And they start understanding, you know what? I actually adapted to my trauma. I actually adapted to the story, the environment that I was living in, and it actually was part of my resilience building, right? So it's how are they staying connected truly to themselves, but also not being mean to themselves, not process, right? But being like, that was actually adaptive. That was a coping strategy that I developed in a really, really tough situation, right? So if you take more of a feminist counseling lens on this, it's like healing becomes a form of resistance because I'm reclaiming my joy, I'm reclaiming my agency, I'm reclaiming my autonomy and my dignity, right? Who am I? The story isn't defining of who I am, but how can I use it to define my process, right? Because of this, yes, this thing happened, but what are the changes that were occurring in me to heal from this, right? That is the story that resilience really focuses on in trauma survivors. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question on the trauma part. So when you said that your clients uh, want to become somebody they were before trauma, so what's the difference or gap like? Um, I mean, just trying to articulate my thoughts here. Just bear
Yeah.
with me for a moment.
Take your time.
Ask is that are they trying to be a part, like, are they trying to forget the trauma or are they trying to build resilience or are they, what exactly happens in trauma and
Mm.
what exactly changes and what part of themselves are they trying to meet with?
Such a great question, right? So I wish I had like a diagram to show you right now, but I'll try to use my hands instead.
Okay,
So
for sure, for sure.
yeah, so when we're thinking about what trauma is, usually, if we think about this as like our life, trauma is like a huge bubble in the middle, trauma, and everything else gets pushed aside. Sense of self, self-esteem, hobbies, interests, all those things, safety, attachment, relationships, everything kind of gets pushed aside. But through the process of healing, and when we say healing, we say that we don't rewrite the trauma. We don't make the trauma go away. Trauma's always there. But our relationship to that trauma, it tends to shrink as we invest in healing about that trauma, right? So the more we go to therapy, the more we have corrective experiences, which we can talk about a little bit later on, um, the more that we sit with the feelings that we don't want to sit with, right? When we instead of working around them, we work through them. That big trauma bubble, it starts to shrink and shrink and shrink. So it doesn't take up as much capacity in our life anymore. It shrinks and shrinks. So that makes more room for other stuff in our life, like relationships, like attachment, like hobbies, like feeling safe, right? So the more that we're investing in that, like we say, resilience comes out of this process. But that bubble, it really starts to shrink the more we're investing in that process of healing. So trauma doesn't go away, but our relationship to how we define it, how to respond to it, the triggers, the activations, that changes in this process. Does that make sense?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Wow. I mean, when it, so in my interactions, I have always seen like there's something wrong with this person and we need to fix, so we are taking them to therapy. That's
Right.
what like
Mhm.
I get as a response when I say like, hey, are you in therapy? What's
Right.
your opinion about getting in therapy and etc. So all these
Mm.
questions when it's generally asked to a lot of people because
Yeah.
of book my therapy.
Right.
This is the response that I get. Most of the times it's just seen as a quick fix or as a
Mm.
magic wand, like the
Yeah.
therapist is able to read your mind and
Just like that.
just but I really like how you said that you are not um neglecting the trauma or triggers, but working through it to
Mhm.
give a different definition to it. So
Mhm.
facing your fears and
Mhm.
so and unlearning. So I can imagine that people become different pre and post trauma. It's a different personality altogether, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
So is there grieving involved in it?
Oh, that's huge, huge part of the process. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. When it comes to building resilience, so
Mhm.
how do people find hope that therapy will help them heal because there is no clear direction. So, for instance, if I give as a reference point for weight training or going to the
Mhm.
gym, there is a clear difference if you follow certain steps, take care of your diet, sleep routines. You see a physical difference. But when it comes to mental health, when it
Mhm.
comes to hope, especially
Mhm.
if somebody is building resilience or going through trauma process, how does that work, and what are the like subtle motivation factors or triggers that people can use
Yeah.
in their day-to-day basis so that they build a resilience and
Mhm.
it helps them?
Yeah, great question. Because I love the comparison between mental health and physical health, right? Because we see it, like, right, our eyeballs see the physical health pieces, right, when we're working out and training. But with resilience, I always say that resilience grows in relationships and not in isolation. So what that means is that I like to take us back to a quote. I don't know who said it, so please don't quote me. But it says that we hurt in relationships and we also heal in relationships, especially when it comes to mental health, right? So it's built through changing the relationship to the trigger or the trauma piece that we talked about last time, right? So this can really like I guess the results piece that you're talking about, like the things that we can actually see can look like co-regulation, right? So in therapy, the biggest part is the therapeutic alliance. That is the biggest tool that we have as therapists to provide that space and place to be seen and heard fully and authentically for who the person is. Right. So when one person is seen in moments of vulnerability, that creates some safety into being, hey, I can actually crumble. No one's going to be mad at me. No one's going to yell at me. No one's going to hit me. Right. None of that. It's going to be, I'm seen, I'm held, I'm actually asked about how I feel, and it's going to be okay. So when we're doing that, we're actually doing something called meaning making from like a narrative approach, right? What is the meaning that we're making to our story, our vulnerability, our resilience, right? And the biggest, I think, factor is self-compassion, right? I think self-compassion is one of the hardest things to reach when we're feeling any trauma response, right? If we're in fight, flight, freeze, fawning. Um, a lot of people, when we're like in distress, we're like, oh, like have some, like you should be easier on yourself, or like have some self-compassion, or like, they mean well when they're saying that, but you can't reach self-compassion when we're so dysregulated, right? So building resilience means that we're having those feelings or the energy that's going up and down like this, having it calm down a little bit more, but also be a little bit more regulated. So it's not as up and down or it's not as quick and fast, right? So we're really going from like building from a place that's very automatic responses to slowing that down, watching what's the self-talk that we're doing? How am I talking to myself? Am I talking to other people? How am I behaving? Am I responding differently to an activation or trigger that used to really piss me off before? Am I slowing that down and really responding in a different way? So I love when clients come back in the therapy room and they're like, you're gonna be so proud of me. Guess what I did this weekend? You know what I mean? So they're like, they can see that themselves, right? So when we're able to kind of see those changes in behavior, in cognition, in thought, in speech, all those things, those are the testers, I'm gonna say, or like the kind of flags that we celebrate in building that resilience, right? And I was gonna say therapy also provides a space for corrective experiences, which are like repeated experiences of safety, right? So they can come in and they're like, oh my God, I did this thing. And it's okay, right? I'm not your mom or dad or your friend who's gonna be like, oh my God, like what did you do, dude? Right? That's not my vibe, right? It's gonna be okay, well, this is what we did. How do you feel about that? What does that mean to you? What can we break down? What is that? Where's that coming from? What's the root of that? Right? We're really gonna sit and talk about it. How does that feel in your body when you just share that with me? Right? There's so much nuance to it that they're like, okay, I'm actually a little bit more safe now. We build that each and every session until they're able to do it themselves. Yeah.
Wow.
hmm
I mean, wow. That I can see there is a lot of hard work that you have done on
Mm,
yourself and gathered that experience. So, good job.
Thank you, Nia. I appreciate that.
So, the next one is about TikTok trauma talk and real healing. So, I can really see that, when you're talking and talking up from your own experience and knowledge, that
Mhm.
there's a lot of hard work that you have put in.
Yeah.
And when you see that, there are people who are probably not licensed to talk about mental health,
Yeah.
are talking about it.
Yeah.
Um, TikTok is just an example. I don't want to like
Yeah.
put a pinpoint something. So, in your experience, what's the gap between TikTok trauma talk and
Mhm.
real healing?
Right. Right. I think this is such a this and AI. I think both are very contentious areas, especially currently in our state that we're living in right now. So I'll say this. So TikTok and social media has really helped destigmatize mental health. It's made psychological language so accessible. People want to really help kind of break down the barriers between clinical language and like giving it an example or a narrative perspective that people can really understand, right? So when people are on TikTok kind of talking about or social media talking about certain clinical theories, they're not talking like a professor, right? They're talking like a friend or like a neighbor or like someone in your community and really making it digestible, right, for any viewer who maybe has no therapy experience at all, which is so great, right? But but we come down to a place where it often strips away any nuance and context of the individual experience, right? That is where the problem lies because it is a lot more cognitive. But when we're talking about real healing, we need to have both cognition, so the theory and understanding of what's going on, but also the embodiment, the feeling of the experience, right? So, in my opinion, real healing really needs slowness and co-regulation, right? So there's another human being in front of me, another person, real time, who can breathe with me, right? Who can notice my cadence is going really high and up and anxious and feeling really, really hot and sweaty. Um, Someone on social media maybe might not see, they won't see that because it's a recorded video, right? Or AI won't be able to pick up on that, right? But another person will be like, oh, okay, maybe what I decide right now, maybe something came up for you. Maybe let's just take a slow breath together. Let's just slow down right now and let's sit together in this moment and really experience, like talk about what we are experiencing, right? And we're creating relational safety and accountability. So as a therapist, I have a lot of accountability, right? So even if maybe I said the wrong word or I said something that was not a really correct interpretation, I need to be able to say sorry for that and really apologize that I made a misstep. Social media, AI isn't really going to do that to you. Right? There is like zero accountability, right? Because they're talking at you or they're giving you information, and it's up to you to how you interpret it, right? And there's also an understanding in real healing of systems of power, right? And hierarchy and all the things, all the isms, right? That is impacting the individual and is catered to the individual, right? And it's embodied work. It's not just cognitive, it's full body nervous system regulation. So I do think in like a nutshell, like online trauma talk, people who are advocating about it can definitely validate the experience, which is so important. You need to see yourself mirrored in those experiences, but it's too overgeneralized and oversimplified. I think it's a problem. Whereas really, like really healing is relational, it's layered and it's very personal to the individual that we're working with.
Well said.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, shifting gears to relationships now.
Yeah.
So, for someone looking for a partner, what are the key qualities or signs you advise they look for to build a strong, healthy, and lasting relationship?
Mm.
And how can they recognize these qualities early on in the relationship?
Early on, yeah, absolutely. Such a key factor. So, first of all, I think it's very therapist of me to say emotional availability. It would be probably the first thing. To see accountability. Are they able to say sorry for things? Are they able to be like, yep, I was 5 minutes late, my bad, and not blame it on you, right? Curiosity to want to get to know you as an individual. And that's like not just like what can they take from you, but like what do you intrinsically have? What are the values that you intrinsically have? Are they being consistent, right? Is it just talk, 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 or is their behavior coming through with the talk as well, right? And are they saying the same things in different contexts so as well, right? And capacity for repair, how do they handle really difficult things, right? If we're looking for a partner, we want to make a long-term partner, we want to make sure that they're able to deal with the stresses of life, right? Things happen all the time, things that we don't expect happen all the time. How do they deal with mishaps or missteps? In general, right? So do they have a capacity to repair, to sit down and talk, like, hey, that thing you said hurt me. Can we talk about why I think this came up for me? Things like that, instead of lashing out or reacting or blaming things on you, right? Completely different perspectives, right? So when we're able to recognize these things early on, it's more about like the pacing of a relationship. Are they like really quick to love bomb and being like, yes, you're the one within the second date, where it's like, I don't think I even like am my real person on the second date. You know what I mean? Like it's like it takes time, it takes nuance, it takes getting to know someone over and over again to really be there, right? So pacing, boundaries, how do they respond when things aren't convenient, and how do they treat people, right? That they don't need anything from. It could be like the waiter or someone at a reception desk, right? So this really tells you a lot, or just strangers in general. How do they treat people? And are they different in public versus in private? I think that's a really big one as well. Gotta make sure. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mhm.
So, given the rise of dating apps
Mm.
and everything that's happening online, how do you think online dating apps are changing the way people see and experience relationships today? And what impact do these platforms have on emotional connection and attachment patterns in couples therapy?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So I think dating apps in general have really expanded access to meeting people, meeting different types of people that maybe you don't see all the time, which is great, but it also really intensified the feeling of disposability, right? Like discarding or disposable. The abundance of choices that we have make it so hard to really tolerate any discomfort, especially in the early dance of intimacy, right? What I mean by that is that when we first starting to get to know someone, it can be awkward sometimes, or it can be like, oh, I don't know if I can be my full self. And sometimes it takes time to really be comfortable to let down your guard and to talk, right, over and over again. But sometimes we think because there's so many different options, if we don't click right away, okay, no, thank you, next, right? Like immediately, right? Whereas we're actually not trained that way to be able to interact with this many people at this much like time and experiencing this many people in such a short amount of space, right? So in therapy, I do see more of a anxious avoidant kind of dynamics that are shaped by digital communication. So what I mean by that is that we've heard about ghosting, right? Like, okay, we're talking, and then suddenly, boom, they're gone because of the evidence of choices, right? Or maybe they heard something and didn't want to spend the time to clarify something, right? Breadcrumbing, or keeping a lot of people orbiting them, right? Which means I'm going to have 5 or 6 potential mates around me, right? Just keeping them around. But, just in case something doesn't work out, or something gives me the ick, or something grosses me out with this person, I have 5 other people that I can talk to, right? But you aren't investing a lot, right? We're putting a little bit of a breadcrumb in everyone's basket. So they think I'm invested just enough, but I'm not fully invested. But they don't know that, right? So there's a lot of that kind of going on, and the illusion of infinite options, right? Because we think we keep swiping. There's so many profiles, right? Again and again and again. It feels like it just doesn't stop, right? So I personally don't think apps themselves are the problem. It's the way we trained the nervous system to expect intimacy like right away, or immediate expectations and novelty, rather than, like we said, slowing down the speed and really understanding depth, right? And the natural progression of relationships and how we get to know someone, right? It's very different.
So that being said, would the consequence of having um, the power of choice, or like you said, like 5, 6 options, like orbiting, be loneliness?
I think you nailed it. Yes, I think so. I think so. Right? It's like an illusion that we have. There's so many like disposable options that we have, but then Sometimes there's also analysis paralysis, right? Because of so many options. I don't know how to narrow this down. How do you just pick this one person? What if the next best thing is coming next month, right? Like there's
Hmm.
also that part too. So then we always end up in a trap sometimes of, okay, I'm just lonely then because there's just too much and there's also not enough at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hmm.
So, what new relationship patterns are you seeing this year and also in 2025?
Yes, I think that's a great question. So, the last couple of years and this year, I'm hearing a lot more people saying that they're not going to be dating anyone who's on therapy themselves, which is interesting. So again, I mean, maybe I'm biased, but like there's that kind of piece or nuance where they're like therapy informed dating, right? Where they're like, if someone has gone to therapy or has that experience of being gone to some sort of counseling, they have it shows different qualities of an individual. Like, okay, they are investing in themselves. They are learning new skills. They know they have like emotional intelligence, right? So there's that. But sometimes it's performative. Don't get me wrong. Some people are like, oh yeah, I've been in therapy for years, but maybe they haven't been, right? Like you just don't know. But it's like a thing that I'm kind of picking up on very subtly, but it's there. Um, there's also a little bit more language around, I don't know if you've heard about like mental labor and weaponized incompetence. So there's a little bit more, I think, thanks to social media. Again, we're learning so much through there of like the cognitive learning pieces where when we're saying mental labor, it means that one person has a whole house together in their minds, right? They know the schedules, they know when the bake sales are, they know when the appointments are, they schedule everything. They know where things are in the house. They know which week the recycling bin needs to go out, which week the garbage bin needs to go out. They have that all in their head, right? But the other person who in the partnership may show weaponized incompetence, so they're like, oh, it's kind of like a learned helplessness type. They're like, oh, if I do this in a sloppy way, they won't ask me to do it again because I don't know how to do it. But they're not investing the time and labor to learning how to do it, even though they can see that their partner has a mental load. Anyways, I see you reacting, Neha. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I laughed because personal experience and also because
Mm.
of how convenient it is to like, oh, you can take care of it, I'll just chill.
So easy, right?
Yeah. The next is about what do couples most value in their relationship and how does EFT uncover that? But do you do couples counseling?
I do,
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
I'm new to it, but definitely doing it. So, most couples, I would say, value emotional safety above anything else, right? So, this means that it's the sense that the partner is accessible, they're responsive, and they're engaged, right? So they actually care about what I have to say and what my internal experience is, and like where's the pain coming from, right? So EFT really is, we call it like a dance where we're kind of working through layers between the couple, right? So they're saying this kind of on the surface level piece, or their reaction is this on surface level piece, but there's an underlying piece as to where this pain is stemming from or coming from, right? So during emotionally focused therapy, it really helps uncover like the underneath layer, right? By slowing down the conflict cycles and revealing the vulnerable needs underneath it. So this is when the partners are able to see that their fights are really more of a tug of war for connection and not attacking, right? But it looks like attacking from above, from the very surface level piece of it, or the reaction and responding different pieces. But below it is like, I really care, and that's why I'm here and I'm fighting for you. But it comes off in a non-adaptive way, kind of thing, right? But so we're really trying to slow it down and really see for each person themselves, what am I really trying to communicate here? I'm actually not mad, I'm hurt, right? And you're like, this is like a pain piece, or like, this is a childhood piece, right? This is like a recreation of a piece that really is very tender for me, right? But I'm kind of showing that I don't care, right? Which is not the truth. It's not that they don't care, they really do care, but it's a hurt and pain piece. And learning how to sit with that, learning how to talk about that, and getting languaging during that process. Yeah.
So I really liked how you explained about the surface level and what lies beneath it. So
Mhm,
even though we may have the best intentions when it comes to expressing our emotions or vulnerabilities with our partner, I was wondering uh, if you could shed light on why we are very different when it comes to behavior or actions or relationships with our intimate partner
mhm,
versus the rest of the world.
mhm,
And that could mean like your friends, family, siblings, relatives, anybody. So, why are those dynamics different? And that being said, would it also be safe to say that we can't expect our partner to be our friend, therapist, dad, mom, sibling,
mhm.
all at the same time?
Yeah, such an important question, Neha. So we tend to choose partners in general, all of us, that mimic some sort of familiarity. This is like the kind of general consensus in like clinical psychology where we're thinking there's something so familiar about this person, but we can maybe redo something in a different way, right? And what I mean by that is that sometimes we have childhood pieces and we have different relationship to our parents, and sometimes those dynamics are very unconscious. All these are very unconscious when we're picking a partner, right? Some people are like, oh my God, no way, I'm not your dad, I'm not your mom. Like they're like, no, no way. But there's something about how you feel with your parents in different ways or caregivers that kind of translates into our intimate partnership when we pick a partner, right? There's this familiar piece, but there's also usually some sort of safety there, right? So when we feel the safest with our intimate partner, typically, and what you would hope for, we are so different because we actually are able to not perform like we do outside and work with friends, with cousins, with other people, with friends, right? So it's like a space that we can kind of go to that is a little bit more, I'm going to say childlike, to be honest, right? That has more vulnerability, more innocence, more um, spark, right? That is just there that really feeds into that intimate partnership dynamic, right? But also maybe we get the most mad with our partner too, right? We actually, something that maybe I wouldn't say to a colleague, I'm actually saying that to my partner, for example, but it's because of the earned safety there, right? That we're like, okay, I feel safe enough to be with this person. I feel safe enough to show myself to this person, but we also are safe enough to repair as well, right? So the most important part in a relationship is not how we actually fight, it's how do we repair any conflict that happens, is what we assess the healthiness of a relationship or sustainability of a relationship. How do you come back together, right? How do you connect, but how do you come back together is the most important part that we're looking at. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but did you have a follow-up piece?
Yeah, it did. It did. This question was about trauma survivors and abuse. So, for somebody who has survived or a traumatic childhood or has experienced relationships which are abusive,
Hmm.
um, abuse or conflict would feel safe for them.
Hmm.
So, how do you um, know the difference so, for example, say if a person is dating someone who's narcissistic
Hmm.
and they are used to feeling safe around narcissistic partners.
Hmm.
So their nervous system would still feel safe to think and feel and act the way they have all because that's the only way they know, right?
100%.
And if they have never known what it is to be around healthy, emotionally available people,
Yeah.
how does that happen? If
Hmm.
that happens,
Hmm.
and what happens to the narcissistic person in the end? So if there is a breakup.
Yes, yes, of course. Such a great question. So again, this is such an important piece because I feel like there's so many people that have come through my doors that have this experience, and for one reason or another. Um, so a lot of it is the therapeutic relationship itself, right? So like I said, the therapeutic alliance, the therapeutic relationship that we're having between client and therapist serves as a blueprint or a template into what is safety like in a relationship. right? So we do that little bit by little bit. This is not an overnight. It's not a, okay, you're in therapy for 4 weeks, now you're healed. No, absolutely not. But this is little bit by little bit, and learn what safety is with another person, right? It doesn't have to be an intimate partner, it could be another person. And we have those corrective experiences. We slowly, like what I find is that the therapist tends to just ask a couple questions like, oh, how do you feel about that, right? Around whatever narcissistic pieces that are kind of coming up, and they're noticing some things. And we try to increase more self-awareness in themselves and more self-confidence, right? So when those things tend to go up, self-trust goes up. And when self-trust goes up, they start asking questions themselves. This person, like my partner said this, but this made me feel this way. Before they would have just taken it for granted. They're like, yeah, yeah, of course, I'm a piece of whatever. But then now they're like, they said this, but I kind of feel a little weird about that, right? And that's all it takes. That's all it takes, right? To question a normal dynamic that was normal for them slowly but surely. It's very slow, right? But it comes little bit by little bit. It kind of titrates into their psyche. But a lot of it really has that self-confidence piece, self-trust piece, self-efficacy piece go up first, right? And learning to sit with the emotions, learning to question things, learning to feel safe with another person and be okay and not risk being hurt or put down or belittled, right? Or being love bombed, right? All those things. And then that may, like you said, lead to a breakup eventually if the person's kind of feeling, this is not really working out for me. I'm not really being respected in the way that I need to be respected. Um, and all those things. So that's one version of it. Another version I do tend to see is when a person has broken up for whatever reason from a narcissistic tendency, like relationship, and they're away from that person. And once they're away from that person, there's a lot more clarity that they have, right? They're like, I don't know why I'm always responding this way. And then we start talking about childhood or patterns, and maybe they grew up with someone who had those tendencies, and they're like, that becomes more familiar, like you said, in relationships as well, because that feels safe. So we do a lot of psychoeducation around why, right? A lot of cognitive pieces first to make it make sense. And then we kind of go into the body. So what does that feel like when I just said that to you? What's lining your body right now? How is this shifting when you said this response versus this? Or can we reframe that to put you in the middle of this instead of the other person? So we really learn to recenter the individual because they're so used to being the background person for the narcissistic relationship, right? They're always in servitude mode. But once we start kind of reframing, repositioning, putting them in the middle, asking them how they are feeling, slowly but surely things start changing, right? And once things change internally, externally things start shifting as well.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
So for somebody who's listening, this and also going through a healing process,
Mhm.
what are top 2 or 3 things they can do today, starting today, to ground themselves back into their bodies?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first is like staying really curious, right, about themselves and their process, like what is going on internally, but also externally, right? To be open to curiosity, that they are surrounding themselves with a support system. I think that's one of the most important things that an individual can do, especially when they're kind of trying to heal from these types of relationships. They usually tend to get cut off. That's the first thing that kind of goes when you're in that kind of partnership. So reconnecting with community, reintegrating themselves with stuff that they like to do, stuff that they're good at, and really working on building self-confidence, right? Because when we're feeling like I am good enough as a person, I am full enough as a person, as an individual, that really changes how we interact with the world around us, right? We no longer feel like I need a partner to feel complete or whole. I am whole on my own, and a partner is in addition to my life, right? My healing process in addition to me as a person, right? So like it really helps just feel more grounded, right? In who you are as a person, as opposed to getting that external piece. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for
Mhm.
sharing that one.
Yeah.
And the last question would be about trends. Like
Hmm.
what 2026 trends like AI or VR
Mhm.
excite or worry you in online EFT?
Oh yes, I know. I think we touched a little bit about this before, but so with AI and with VR, things like that, I'm really excited that they increase accessibility, especially for people in like remote areas or not a lot of access to mental health help. And VR could really help, I think even like in couples therapy, really help practice regulation and like an immersive, inclusive experience. But what really worries me is anything that replaces the relational core of therapy, right? We always say that therapy is a relational process. It takes two at least to make this work. So AI can really like miss the nuance of like multiple perspectives. For example, when it comes to couples therapy, right? It can really focus on just like one experience or like overall pieces, but it doesn't pick up on facial expressions or oh, your body just tensed up there when your partner said that. What's coming up for you, right? Or like, I see you leaning back now instead of forward. What's coming up, right? So all those like very small nuanced pieces can be missed, right? That only a therapist in real life can really pick up on that. I do think it also takes away the emotional risk taking that's involved when we're in therapy, like emotional vulnerability, which really helps be in therapy, like make it more approachable and accessible. So people who weren't really like pro therapy before may be like, oh, okay, I can just type a couple of things in and think about what can AI tell me about my situation. So it's great for people who are like never stepped into a therapy room, never thought about therapy before. I think it's really bringing them kind of into their bubble just a little bit more, which is great. So it's like, again, accessibility, which is so great. But personally, healing happens in connection. I think I told you that before, right? We hurt in relationship and we also heal in relationship. And technology just in general really can't replace attunement and rupture and repair, right? Or take accountability for anything. So I think technology can really enhance connection, but it can't substitute it. So it's a great like reflective piece or a cognitive piece, but it doesn't reflect the embodiment that's really needed in the therapy room. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mhm. Yeah.
More so because we see models being trained to just validate whatever questions have been asked, and they have their
100%.
own memories to respond, to take cues and respond. So, well said. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so they can find me on my website, saranyaapsychotherapy.com. And I do have an Instagram account as well, Saranya_psychotherapy. Facebook, it's there too. LinkedIn, it's just my first name and last name. So yeah, a couple of links that are available.
Okay, I'll also add all these links in the description so
Thank
that
you.
it's easily referable. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate, and a great this was a great conversation and really insightful. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Neha. I really appreciate the opportunity and so glad to connect today. Yeah.
Thank you.